Let's have a look at a newspaper article to illustrate how your ability to spot a potentially fatal hazard is affected by your knowledge and experience. The article is entitled "Backpacker's Lucky Escape After Deadly Octopus Stunt." A backpacker visiting Queensland has cheated death after manhandling one of the ocean's most venomous creatures for a laugh. UK national John Paul Lennon was fishing with friends near Bundaberg when they caught a blue-ringed octopus. Unaware the animal's bite could kill a person in 30 minutes, Lennon had it placed on his bare skin for a video. After posting the footage to Facebook, Lennon was told how close to death he'd come. "I could have done with the information a lot sooner. Just lucky," he said. Others were less impressed with the deadly stunt. "It's not a laughing matter. Those octopus have venom to kill 25 humans in minutes. So stupid," one user said. Lennon's friend, who filmed the incident, said he was shocked when he learned of his mate's close brush with death. Most of us would agree that had he known about blue-ringed octopus, he would not have put it on his arm. The fact he was unaware of the animal's deadly venom points to the important role knowledge and experience plays in your ability to spot a fatal hazard. If you undertake a new task without training or instruction, then it's likely you too will be unaware of potentially fatal hazards. When John states, "I could have done with the info a lot sooner," he's acknowledging the important role training and education plays in giving workers knowledge about potentially fatal hazards, which in turn greatly improves your ability to spot those hazards. The article indicates a Facebook user thought putting the animal on his arm was stupid. However, this implies he did it knowing the dangers, or that he didn't use his common sense. We now know we are not born with common sense, and that this actually comes from knowledge and experience. So the next time you become aware of someone being severely injured, it's possible they lacked understanding about the hazard and therefore didn't spot it or control it. Your hazard perception, or your ability to spot a hazard, is greatly affected by your knowledge and experience relevant to any task you undertake. Please remember that fact the next time you think about doing something outside your normal job role. It sounds obvious, but spotting the presence of a hazard isn't as easy or as simple as it first sounds. Common sense just won't cut it. The hazards that are often associated with fatalities are the hazard that is very familiar. It's the one that is ever present and everybody knows about. So they get used to it, they normalise it and forget about it or become complacent. The other hazard is the novel one. It's unique, very uncommon, and people don't understand it. It's like what Shannon said, you don't know what you don't know.
Let's go back to the definition of hazard perception. We saw it was the ability or use of a process to notice the presence of a hazard. I'd like to focus on the first part, which is the ability to notice a hazard. How can we improve our ability to notice a hazard? By constantly asking yourself or others a simple question: what could go wrong, or what if?
We've come to a very exciting part of the course where you will see and hear from one of the world's leading experts in safety and outback survival techniques. After watching video 1, please write down in your workbook what you think will happen next.
Any questions?
What sort of medical kit are you carrying?
Good question. You're in a rainforest, nature's own first aid kit. Out there, you've got everything you can want.
Antibiotics?
Yeah, well, not antibiotics, no, but other stuff.
Pressure bandages?
Not pressure bandages or antibiotics, don't worry about that. The fact is we've got plenty of safety gear. We've got a two-way radio in there. We've got a fire extinguisher. Not many people have fire extinguishers, and we've got one. You ever used one of these in the event of a fire? No. This is what you use. Okay, this is the activating button here. Okay, this is the activating button here, but first of all, you must pull the safety pin. Oh!
We're about to see another example of Russell's bushcraft expertise. And again, see if you can foresee what might go wrong and make a note in your workbook.
Of course, we couldn't spend all day just looking at wildlife. With 3 hungry mouths to feed, I figured we needed to bag some fish for dinner. And I knew the perfect technique.
Yeah, this is called bow fishing.
Huh?
The tip is very, very sharp, and you go for the surface species. You might want to get a shot of this. But you've got to aim about 6 inches above the fish because of the optic illusion of the water. As I think I've just spotted one, but you've got to be quick. As I think I've just spotted one, but you've got to be quick. Oh!
Oh my God, what have you done?
Is that, yeah, just don't pull it out, leave it there, otherwise you'll bleed. Or what, you know, elbow in the face. Oh, yeah, okay. No worries, just hold your hand there. You hang on to that, and let's get back as quick as we can, because, did you get the shot the way you, no.
The 2 French tourists made it back to Paris in one piece, and Russell continues to help countless others, passing on his wisdom and bushcraft to anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path. I'm sure nearly everybody could see what was about to go wrong. Unfortunately for our French tourist, neither she nor her 2 travelling companions could see what was about to unfold. Even self-proclaimed experts such as Mr. Coit can sometimes fail to see what was about to go wrong.
So sometimes relying on your own ability to notice the presence of hazards lets you down. After all, we're not robots.
In workplaces all over Australia, fatal risk hazards are considered especially heinous. In Compass Group, the dedicated site teams who identify these vicious hazards are members of an elite squad known as the Fatality Prevention Unit. These are their stories.
I was mowing a large area of grass using a ride-on mower. The grass was damp and was clumping from underneath the blade cover. The grass wouldn't go into the catcher. I jumped off the mower, which kept running because the seat sensor that stops the machine if you get off the seat had been disconnected. We did that because the mower was hard to start. I used my fingers to clear the blockage, but they came in contact with the blades and I received several stitches at hospital.
I was on a roof clearing leaves from a gutter. I picked up a pile of leaves with both hands, but a small snake was in that pile as well. It bit me on my face twice, which gave me a fright, and I fell off the roof.
I was cleaning the coffee grinder, which was slightly blocked. I placed my finger inside the grinder to clear the blockage, but this activated the unit, resulting in the tip of my finger being removed. Access to the blade should have been prevented by a guard, but that was missing. I should have been shown a different way to clean the grinder, but couldn't find the cleaning tool and just wanted to get the job done.
The underbench fridge has a fluoro light fitting that was broken and the wires were a bit loose. People reported receiving a tingle from time to time when their hands brushed against the loose wire. We need that fridge to store food safely, and after a couple of months we finally managed to get it fixed.
A customer asked if a meal they were about to purchase contained nuts, as they were allergic to nuts. It was very busy, and I'm pretty sure when we made the dish before, it didn't contain nuts. So I told the customer it was okay. The customer recovered overnight in hospital and was discharged the next day. Turns out the recipe had changed, but it tasted even better, I think.
I was using a stick blender to make soup. The power cord came in contact with the naked flame, which melted the plastic, and the exposed wire came in contact with the metal soup pot, causing sparks to appear. Luckily, the power tripped and I didn't get an electric shock. The main thing was that the customer got their meal on time.
This is Ted and Andy, two mates who enjoy working together at Compass Group. Not too long ago, Ted and Andy were completing a competency assessment on a bus driver when they received a phone call from Max, who works for a subcontractor. Max was calling to advise a vehicle they were expecting was waiting to be dropped off. To save time, Ted and Andy instructed the bus driver to take them to the truck's location. Upon their arrival, they found the vehicle being unstrapped from the trailer by the truck driver Max. To be safe, both Ted and Andy made a point of standing at least 8 metres away, a suitable exclusion zone for the task being completed. The bus driver waited in the bus even further away. As Max unlocked the chain binders, Ted's phone rang and he answered the call. Andy watched on as Max lowered hydraulic ramps, but it was clear something wasn't quite right. It seemed one side of the ramp wasn't lowering the way it should. Andy jumped straight in to help Max and try and determine what was wrong with the ramp. While standing under the ramp, Andy and Max realised the hydraulic arm of the truck wasn't connected to the bottom of the trailer. They decided together that they would attempt to temporarily fix the hydraulic arm of the truck to get the car off the trailer. In making this decision, they ignored that Andy wasn't trained or competent to perform this task and that a risk assessment was required. No longer on the phone, Ted also decided to lend a helping hand. Suddenly, the ramp shifted and began to fall.
Watch out!
As it dropped, Andy jumped out of the way while pushing Ted clear from danger. But it was too late. Ted was knocked to the ground and received a graze to the back of his head by the falling ramp. He was only millimetres away from sustaining a serious or fatal injury. Andy performed first aid and called emergency services. This serious incident certainly could have been avoided. Please learn from your colleagues' mistakes. Even if you have the best intentions and are just trying to resolve a problem, never attempt any task that you're not skilled and qualified to perform. Every non-routine task needs to be risk assessed. Even the most basic of tasks can expose us to risks that can cause serious injury or even death. The most important thing you will do on any working day is return safely home to your family and friends each night. When you find yourself in a situation that requires skills or training that you do not have, simply stop. Never attempt tasks you are not trained or skilled to do. Remember, even the simplest of non-routine tasks need to be risk assessed, and we must verify the appropriate controls put in place are effective. These small acts of contemplation may one day save your life or the life of a workmate.
If you start a task that is new or unfamiliar, then you have made a choice to place yourself in harm's way. This type of situation is one of the leading reasons why people are seriously injured or killed in the workplace. Work that is unplanned moves risk along that continuum that we saw earlier to the far right-hand side, indicating that the chance of something going wrong and a person being killed has greatly increased. There's a simple message. If it's new, don't do, until the job has been risk assessed and work planned to ensure that all hazards are identified and the risk is controlled. Your challenge is moving your can-do attitude to a safely can-do attitude.
So, this is when using a process to reduce the chance of missing the presence of a potential fatal hazard becomes so important. It also means we can enlist the help of others. As we spoke about earlier, we can use our own ability to notice hazards by asking, what could go wrong? And another way is to use a process to help us identify hazards and potential risks. By using a JSEA or a SAM, we can plan how to do a job safely. This process is even more effective when you do it with others. The combined experience, knowledge, and problem-solving skills will result in a better risk assessment, a better job plan, and vastly better chance of not getting hurt.
Here is the first page of our Job, Safety and Environmental Analysis, or JSEA because we like our acronyms. If a job is new or even non-routine, meaning you do it only once every 2 weeks or longer, you must complete or review a JSEA.
This is the hazard identification page of the JSEA. It is designed to remind you about possible hazards that may be lurking within the task you're about to do. It asks you and your team to think about any possible interaction with biological hazards, such as animals, for example. So next time we go mountain bike racing in the Canadian wilderness, we'll tick this box and write bear in the next page of the risk assessment. It asks about gravity type hazards, and we are directed to think about things that could fall on us. It also asks us to consult the site's risk register, because this is the one-stop shop documenting all the known hazards on site. It just makes sense. It's the obvious place to look if we want to spot more hazards before we do the work. If you haven't attended the JSEA awareness course that teaches you how to conduct excellent risk assessments, then ask your supervisor when the next course is on.
Another process that can help us identify or spot hazards is our individual pre-task risk assessment called SAM. It asks us to stop for a moment and look for hazards. Action any controls to reduce the risk and monitor control to make sure the risk remains low. The first question is so important. It asks if you are about to undertake a fatal or non-routine task. If you answer yes, then the requirement is to plan the job through a risk assessment. If you haven't done one, then the process clearly tells you to not continue with the work and discuss with your supervisor. The SAM awareness course should be done as part of your induction. But if you haven't attended the course, please ask your supervisor to take you through it.
If we remind ourselves that risk is ever present and nothing is 100% safe, then the SAM process becomes even more important. Here is the SAM process flowchart that maps out the first part of the risk assessment and the question that Shannon just took us through. Once we have begun the task, the SAM flowchart reminds us that any of those risk factors that make up the overall risk could suddenly change. Remember the driving example we did earlier with the changing risk factor graphs. SAM reminds us of the importance of stopping and reassessing the risks and controls.
I took some time out to speak with Emma, and she shared her story about her husband, who's a painter.
My husband is a painter. He works for himself as a sole trader. He does have some other painters that work alongside with him, but quite often he works on his own as a painter. He does a lot of working at heights. He deals with a lot of lead based paints and quite often also asbestos. Sometimes he can be working against the elements, like extreme heat, and then at times, obviously in Queensland, we get some quite heavy rain also, so there are quite a lot of risks involved in his job as a painter. Very early starts trying to beat the weather, a lot of time spent in the car on the motorway, a lot of driving involved in his job also. So we have a beautiful 1.5-year-old daughter. His parents, he's got 2 brothers, he's got 8 nieces, and then his extended family and friends also. So he's a huge part of a lot of people's lives. If he's doing an external repaint on a house, he could spend a lot of time at that house on a ladder and there'd be nobody around. Sometimes I worry that like if he did have an accident or a fall, there would be no one there to see him and no one there to help him until like them homeowners came home from work or whatever it may be. And also people know, like a sole trader, running your own business, you try and keep down your costs. So if that means going with the cheaper scaffold erector, sometimes that's what you have to do, and it may not be built to the highest standard, so I do worry about that sometimes. There has been an occasion where he was doing a job and he had to have some scaffolding put up, and what he was quoted from one company was a lot cheaper than what he'd been quoted from some others, and he went with them, and then it was quite obvious why they were cheaper once it had been put up. It wasn't to the standard that he would have liked, but he had already paid for it, it was booked in, he needed to get the job done, so he went ahead with it. So I think he knew himself in his gut that it wasn't the right thing to do, but sometimes you feel like your hand's forced and you've made, when you've already made those decisions to go ahead with it. So I'd just remind him, that he's not going to work every day for his clients, for his customers. He's going to work every day for the life and the lifestyle that we've built for ourselves and our daughter. So is that really worth the risk? You need to weigh up how your client's going to feel versus how your family are going to feel if something does happen to you at work, because you've put yourself at risk, because you've made the choices that have put yourself at risk. We work to live, not live to work. So I just like to remind everybody that before you take that risk or take that chance, just weigh up the consequences, the impact of not seeing something through, or not delivering on something versus the impact on, if you take that risk, the impact it's going to have on your family and your extended family and friends. We're starting to see the shift. People are starting to stand up and say, like, no, that's outside of my scope, or no, that's not actually my job to do that. Just because you want me to do it because I'm here and available now, I don't, I'm not required to do it. The client isn't the person impacted, it's the people at home.
Please take a moment to write down your thoughts about Emma's story. It would be great if 1 or 2 people took a couple of minutes and shared their thoughts with the group to spark a couple of minutes of discussion.
Hi, welcome back. I'm sure you've had some great discussions again. So guys, Mel, interested in your thoughts about what you've just seen and what resonated with you on that video.
I guess another compelling video, a consistent message that we're seeing throughout these videos is that we work to live, not live to work, and that all of us, irrespective of our situations, we're going home to something significant in our life. So that's, I guess, the first thing. The second thing is really about, again, empowering employees. Sometimes we're going to get substandard equipment. And if it's not the right equipment, if it's not at the level that we need to get the job done safely, then don't do the job. Don't start the job, don't accept the equipment, send it back.
Spot on.
As a company, we would much prefer to delay a role because the equipment is substandard than to continue with the work and injure, let alone kill someone at work. So they're the two key takeaways for me.
And sometimes it's a common misconception that, you know, we should go with the cheapest quote, or, you know, that's what the business wants. They want to make money, right? So therefore I'm going to get the substandard equipment and I'm happy to use it. I'll put myself at risk because at the end of the day I'm going to save a couple of bucks to get this job done quicker.
Our people, our teams, sometimes I don't think they believe that they can speak up, that they can say, you know, no, I'm not comfortable with that piece of equipment. It's not right. It's not fit for purpose. Because again, we're so busy.
That can-do
attitude. And we want to please the client and we want to look after our customers. So, you know, so long as the customer's getting the service, you know, we're madly working in the background to make up for the fact that we've got equipment that isn't working or is not fit for purpose. I mean, you've seen it heaps of times.
The electric eel that broke that poor guy's, another plumber, thumb.
We bought a cheap...
What happened?
Yeah, so it was a cheap electric eel missing some critical safety components. So, you know, dead man switches and things like that. And what happened is this particular electric eel, it grabbed his glove and it twisted it back on itself. And he couldn't disengage the driving mechanism because his hand was twisting around a shaft. And obviously your instinct is to try and grab that and stop that rather than, you know, reefing out the power cord in this case to stop it.
And I think the other thing is often when something is too good to be true, i.e. it's really cheap, then you're going to get what you're paying for. So
it was like Em said on the video, right? Like the husband went with the cheapest quote.
And he got what that quote provided, substandard equipment, which puts him at risk.
I think also for me too, again, is that moments that matter. You know, they've got a gorgeous little daughter. And you can see the emotion in Emma's eyes when she says that. And obviously her husband thinks of his daughter all the time as well, but then when he's at work, he's focused on work and doesn't think about the risks. It's like Wendy's video, you know, that talked about we don't think about the risks.
Well, and she reminds him that he has those clients and he has that business to build a livelihood for them as a family unit, not for his clients.
And it's almost the opportunity. So when he gets to the job, it's too late. You know, all the scaffold's sitting there, the client's sitting there waiting. It's too late to make those sort of decisions. That's why in planning the job is so important. You've got to do that stuff before you get to the job site, before your scaffold is delivered.
Do the risk assessment beforehand. That's a good point.
It is. But also, being able to stop the job. If it does all still not pan out, despite the fact that you've planned it, it's still looking at that scaffold and going, it's missing those components.
Absolutely.
Okay, stop, call up.
It's not worth my life.
Yeah,
it's not.
Or my team's life.
Absolutely, giving ourselves permission to stop the job, stop the work because it's unsafe.
And again, it's an ethos of our company that you've got the right to stop the job. We've got, you know, as part of our SAM process, etc., we've got a card that's signed off by various ALT members and GMs that say, you know, here is your right to stop the job if you think you're going to be, you know, at risk of injury.
And I guess that's my challenge to all of our employees listening to that, to put that into practice. So we've clearly got a strong message from the ALT I sometimes think employees are reluctant to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, this video is permission.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if it's
Great
unsafe,
point.
stop the work.
Great point.
We need to get better at it.
Yeah, we do. I think we've got to have that confidence to do that. And I know we've been, over the years, we've tried to promote it and we've really acknowledged and given out great workday cards for people.
Because certainly people have stepped up.
Yeah.
There's countless scenarios where people have said no.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've been
recognised
for that, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, again, that reminds you of Colin's statement. You know, it says no one's going to thank you for cutting a corner and being involved in an incident.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get thanked for that.
No.
You know, and least of all, your family are not going to thank you for it.
They're not going to thank you, yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
And it ultimately...
The potential heartache that you can cause them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sure if he fell off the scaffold, the job's still not going to get done, right?
Yeah, yeah, good point.
Some people think throwing yourself out of a perfectly good plane is about the dumbest thing you can do, while others think it's fun. So how can there be such a variance in people's opinion on how risky something is?
People's risk perception is developed and shaped by a range of things, such as skills and knowledge and life experiences. Hazards vary in their perceived risk, which may be influenced by the person's perception of their own competence to cope with the hazard or risk factor. People can become overconfident about their abilities and become complacent about the risk. There's a reason why young males are overrepresented in motor vehicle accidents and beach drownings. There's a reason why very experienced tradespeople still die performing routine, high-risk tasks. Another factor that influences a person's risk perception is company culture. All of us have the responsibility to foster a culture that encourages people to work safely and not take shortcuts. Everyone participating in this course has the ability to improve the culture at their site. You can do so by watching out for each other, by reporting faulty equipment, and taking time to plan your work, among many other things. Leaders and supervisors must invest time every day to undertake interactions and have conversations about safety with their teams. One final factor that is important to be aware of about risk perception is the anticipated consequence. These usually take the form of positive consequences, such as taking shortcuts to go home earlier, or not conducting risk assessments because it takes less effort. Remember what Wendy said in her story. We all take chances because we forget about the risks. It's everybody's responsibility to look out for each other and constantly point out those risks.
If I think about Russell Coit, I see how people are more likely to make poor judgments about risk if they have performed the job many times without incident. This is the problem with fatal risk or low likelihood, high consequent risks. People can become convinced that their way of performing a job is the correct way, even if it's inconsistent with our proper work instructions. That's why there are differences between how work should be done versus how work is actually done. When people have poor awareness of the real risk, when they perceive a task to be less risky than it actually is, that's when fatalities occur.
It's a core belief of Compass Group's organisational culture that every employee has the right to stop doing a task if they feel the activity is putting them at risk. In fact, it's more than a right, it's an expectation. If you perceive there is a risk of injury, then you are empowered to stop the job.
Our last story is from John. The potential to die from being locked in a walk-in refrigerator is real. Only recently, the South Australian Police Department was found guilty over the death of a contract caterer who was accidentally locked in a walk-in freezer. I really want to thank John for allowing me to share his very emotional story in the hope that it prevents a death in our business.
and I've gone out, gone onto the lower dock, opened the door to 180 degrees against the container next door to it, carried the first 2 boxes in and placed on the shelf in there, and carried the last box in, which had to go right to the far end of the container. As I put the box down, I've heard the whirlwind come across the car park and looked up to see the door slam shut with the wind at quite force. There's no light in there, it's pitch black, there's no alarm, there's no secondary exit, there's nothing. Obviously there was no one outside, so I wasn't able to make anybody hear. I used my shoulder as obviously the most force I could get behind the door. Because of the humidity up there at the time, the floor was wet, so I couldn't get a lot of traction on my feet, and I actually couldn't really, because of it being dark, I couldn't really see how to move away from the door. So I used my shoulder to hit the door as hard as I could, which I believe was 4 or 5 times until my shoulder was actually sore. I then stopped for a breath, and I tried to make a phone call. So that was 20 minutes past 6 when I tried to make the phone call, but there's no signal in the container. And then I did actually start to panic then. So I had another go at the door with my shoulder, and I hit it another 2 times before my shoulder was really sore again, and I was out of breath again. So I gave the door another barge with my shoulder, and as I barged the door, I just saw a tiny gap of light at the top between the rubber and the door, and I gave it the biggest hit I could manage, and the door came open and I came flying out. When I got out it was 6:37, so I was in there for
half an hour,
nearly half an hour, yeah, in total. I was quite shaken up. I've been in two life-threatening situations before, and I've got to say that that was worse than either of those two. Nobody would have come and looked for me. No one would have had no reason to come down to that container because that was the surplus stuff, and they had plenty of stuff up in the kitchen. And I could have probably been there till the next morning if I couldn't have got the door open.
Any thoughts were going through your mind at the time? Were you like a bit concerned?
I did start thinking about family.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah. And I'm sorry that we so I think it's so important that we share with people that it's a real thing.
It's a near-death experience.
We're in a container similar to the one that John was trapped in not so long ago. As you can see, this is what John would have experienced running at 2 degrees with no light. You can't see me at all. Fortunately, I've got an iPhone and we knew what we were going to do. John didn't have an iPhone, or at least a phone that had a strong light. And even in a situation like what John was experiencing, you don't always think clearly. So we're hoping that people understand the seriousness of being entrapped in a container and the experience that puts forward. And hopefully no one ever has that experience again.
You either need to close them down so they're not used until you have a secondary exit, some sort of alarm system that can be heard by other people, and lighting in there as well. If they're damaged, they need to be closed off, padlocked so people can't get in them, and the key kept separate. You just can't go in them if there's no way of getting at them again. In our business, we have chefs that work on their own at night that need to go in them. There's no one else about. They're not going to be found. You know, it's dangerous.
Please take a moment to write down your thoughts about John's story. Take a couple of minutes to share your thoughts and discuss with the group.
Okay guys, so that would have been, I'm sure, a very emotional discussion that you've had. That's a very powerful story that John's been kind enough to share with us. So obviously, guys, keen to hear your thoughts on John's experience. I know, Mel, that really touched you. Want to share what your thoughts are about that?
All the videos are compelling, but this one really, I guess, left me with a really sobering thought. And again, it's that response that he has kept, you know, that experience and the impact that it's had upon him. He remembers the time, you know, the humidity of the floor, how long the bit of sunlight. I guess the other thing I would say is that all of our sites have fridges and freezers. And I guess when I watched that video, I kind of immediately jumped to offshore and remote, you know. It's out the back or in a distant location, but all of my urban sites have fridges and freezers.
They do. Some
of our facilities might have 1 or 2 people in them. You know, the second person's gone home for the day, so just one person's on site. So entrapment is an issue for us across the entirety of the business. And it's a real serious risk to our business. If we have fridges or freezers that don't have those alarms, don't have secondary exits, we really need to raise that with our clients, with our senior leaders, to address that risk.
Fairly recently that, I think it's the South Australian Police Department were prosecuted because a catering contractor was locked in one of their walk-in freezers and died.
And absolutely, and that'd be similar to a lot of your cafes. Absolutely. So this is not remote or offshore using, transportable containers. The risk exists in all cold room or freezer rooms.
Yeah, I was on a site the other day and inside, I can't recall if it was a fridge or a freezer, but the manual bell, the switch that you ring the bell, it had broken off.
Yep.
So even if someone had trapped in, they wouldn't have been able to ring the bell to signal to employees on the outside that they're stuck in there. So yeah, very good point. We've got to be vigilant in terms of, are those control mechanisms working? Are they right? And are they working so that if you do get entrapped, you can signal to people outside of the fridge or freezer that you need assistance?
It's about making sure the maintenance is kept up.
Good point.
You know, and
you're testing it, the emergency response.
Yeah.
Situations like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Add it to your emergency management plan and test it periodically.
Yeah.
How quick can we rescue a person in that situation?
Yeah, and we were talking, I guess, offline, how long can people sustain in fridges or freezers? I know, the research is questionable, but I don't want us to have to test that.
You're in your shirt and your slacks, you're in and out, you're grabbing your product and you're out.
Yeah.
If you get locked in there, you're not prepared for that.
And John, I obviously want to thank John for sharing his story. It's clearly, a significant impact on him. It had a significant impact on me just watching it. And as I said, the amount of recall that he has in that life-threatening situation, I don't want us as an organisation to put someone in that situation again.
Just in work, but in life, we all sort of have the perception that it's not going to happen to me.
Nobody's going to thank you for cutting corners and being involved in an incident.
The client isn't the person impacted, it's the people at home.
We all take chances, don't we? Because we actually forget about the risks.
We are a can-do organisation, and that gets us into trouble.
We live to work, we should be working to live.
Because you've made the choices that have put yourself at risk.
I've done it hundreds of times before.
We've come to the end of our course. We want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to participate. Please remember, fatal risk is real. People die at work too often. Don't be the next one. Please look out for each other and implement the critical controls outlined in your pocketbook. Please remember, what we did today
is for your moments that matter. Is for your moments that matter.
Can we do that again?
Is for your moments that matter.
Oh, sorry guys, I stuffed up.
All right, everyone, let's get back to it.
No, don't worry about that. Go.
I'm like, shit.
Today
is for the
moments that matter.
Okay, everyone. Okay.
Where's that leading to? You're doing really well flying through this.
Many of our urban sites have...
No, I haven't been comfortable all day. I want each of you to sit on this gusset just once today. We're all about to see another 3 examples of Russell Crowe's.
Or J...
I can smell it. I can smell the head.
Yeah, absolutely. But
I know this may be a little uncomfortable for some of you people. Ugh. That was...
What do you mean, you people?
You people. you people. Oh, God. Thanks for the help, Pops.
when people have poor sorry, I just pulled a face.
Whoop, whoop. That's gold. That's gold right there.
That's
Oh.
Wrap it up.
Oh. Boom. Mic drop.